Hello again everyone and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John and as always thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. What's something that you have seen that you cannot unsee? Tough stuff today. Please remember to like, share, comment, ask, and listen for shoutouts, and subscribe. Have a great day.
I watched a young boy between 7 and 10 years of age, the best I could tell, chase a soccer ball into traffic with his head down and get absolutely exploded by a dump truck. For whatever reason, from about 50 yards away, I randomly locked on him, chasing the ball, and watched the entire thing play out, helpless for about 15 seconds. He was chasing the ball, and then there was pink mist where his body was, and his shoes shot 30 feet into the air. My mom on her deathbed, as I held the phone to her ear as her other children and grandchildren said goodbye. She was so afraid it still haunts me. But it taught me that what people want to hear is that their life was meaningful. My brother said those type of things. Everyone else said, "I love you," but my brother spoke to how important she was. My children were lying on either side of their mother as she passed away from a brain aneurysm. Shit is crazy haunting sometimes, and I pray that anyone reading never sees that shit. I'm a 75-year-old male. And unfortunately, life can be real. Not necessarily cruel, just real. At age 11, I had my 3-year-old brother die in my arms of infant pneumonia. It was 1961, and we could not find a doctor who would treat him without us proving the ability to pay. We'd have one fellow who would, but at the time, he was on vacation. My brother died for lack of some penicillin. My mom, dad, and I, as the older child, had been taking turns holding him and trying to comfort him, and around the clock. Kinda hard to forget. In 1969, I had a best friend die in my arms, bleeding out too fast in the middle of an attack in Vietnam. I could only listen to his last words, which was a worry about who would take care of his wife and child now. In October of 2013, my wife was feeling ill and having severe migraines to the point of puking and passing out. I wanted to take her to the hospital and she kept refusing, as she'd had them before. Thought they'd pass. Finally, it was so bad I snatched her into my arms, put her in my car, and set out for the nearest hospital. I lived rural, knew I could get her there faster than waiting for an ambulance. Got there, feeling urgency, not panic, that this had happened before. But as I was checking her in, taking to the screening nurse, my wife suddenly screamed full force and keeled over unconscious. Oh, Jesus. Immediately I had a staff member pushing me back and away after a dozen people appeared from nowhere and whisked her away. It was a long wait, over an hour. And then a doctor in full surgical gear walked out, head bowed and looked up at me with tears in her eyes. I tried, please believe me, I tried. I thought I was a strong man. I've faced war, damn near died in an explosion. I'd faced tornadoes and hurricanes and maintained my composure. Not then. The room whirled and people had to catch me as I collapsed and cried like a baby. To this day I keep wondering if I'd just decided to get her to the hospital even a half hour earlier. Would that mean the woman I loved and was married to for 41 years would still be alive? Did I kill her by my procrastination? There are some things you can never forget or unsee. You know how some agencies have to have one guy who watches the internet for horrible things before they are taken down? I was cycled in for that duty for a short period of time and it broke me. I've seen people getting cut up with chainsaws, beheaded, cut from just the front of their neck so all their tubes disconnect, but they're still alive. People blown up into pink dust and a lot of screenshots of rival groups who have killed high-ranking guys and identifying what is left. Brutal crime scenes. Some of these killers were women too, not just the men. I watched another analyst burst into tears because she had to transcribe the dying words of people who were trapped and nobody could save them. But their comms were still coming through. Other people had been broken by a video of a baby being thrown into a deep fryer. Some dispute between high-ranking members of rival groups. There's bad stuff out there in the wilds of undeveloped nations. I was a civilian first responder to a car wreck where two young individuals crashed their BMW at 99 miles per hour. They nearly hit me before they hit a light post, hydrant, and control box. I immediately pulled over to try and help them out of the wreck, but as I run up to a chunk of metal that looked more like a ball of crumpled paper than an actual car, I quickly realized there was no one in there to help. What I saw is indescribable. They were everywhere. As I collected myself and backed away, I had to walk away as if through a minefield out of respect, because they were literally everywhere. That event has haunted me since. That was November of 2016. When I was a kid, we lived way out in this dirt road. Neighbor's dog died right out by the road, and they just let their other dog proceed to eat it. It took almost a week, with the live dog proceeding to get more and more feral, protecting its food, lunging at cars. At one point, they even left the dog's water bowl out by the dead dog. Went to pick up some custom fence from a local fence company. I was standing at the garage door to the factory waiting for my order and watched a guy's hand wrap around a table router bit. He was wearing gloves. It says on the machine, no gloves or loose clothing when using this machine. I swear it tore his hand off. I didn't stay to watch. The screaming was enough. I once saw a guy try to break into a house in Oregon. She had a machete and hacked him to pieces. He was in the hospital with lashes over his body, bones sticking out, fingers missing, his arm hanging by a few threads of flesh. I was 13. My brother collapsing to the ground while screaming in anguish after the police told us our dad shot himself. Worst moment of my life. I was the only coherent family member, so I had to go pick up our dad's car from where it was parked. They had already transported his body to the coroner, but the blue tarp that had covered him was still there, fluttering in the breeze, covered with his blood. Second night as an EMT, and a drunk driver who wasn't wearing his seatbelt paired his skull cap with the windshield. He was still moving when we got there. He passed as we were working the door and fell back. His brains kinda just fell out like a pinkish red scrambled egg. I opened the door and got to hear the groan he made as he fell back. He was already dead, but his body just made the noise that I'll live with forever. I used to be in hotel management about 30 years ago. Had a couple of suicides in rooms, but one in particular stuck with me. A really attractive woman who was a regular guest shot herself in the head at close range with a high-caliber pistol, meaning she pressed the barrel to her head. There was nowhere for the compression to go but through her head. I found her laying on her back, nude in the bed with half of her head missing and brain matter all over the ceilings, walls, and floors. A few years ago, I was off the bus on my way home from work. I stopped to change the music or something when I heard a crash. I turned to look and saw a dude lying on the ground with a motorcycle next to him. He was trying to pull out of a parking lot when a car hit him from the side. It was about then that I heard the screaming. I dropped all of my stuff and ran over to him. When I got there, there was blood everywhere. I looked for the source. It was fairly easy to find. His calf had snapped in half and the bone was sticking out of his leg. I was panicking, of course, but I told him to stay calm as I was calling 911. After the call, I sat with him for a minute or two. He was conscious enough to keep pressure on his leg. He asked about his motorcycle. I said, yeah, it's not looking so hot, man. Don't worry about it right now. He's like, shit, dude, my leg. I said, yeah, man, I know. But hey, you're gonna have a cool scar. Luckily, that got a giggle out of him. After what felt like ages, but was probably 1 or 2 minutes, a few other people had crowded around. I turned to look back and saw a group of surgeons running out with first aid supplies. It turns out that the parking lot was for a small surgery center. They came and staunched the bleeding while waiting for the ambulance to pick him up. I was pretty nauseous for the rest of the day, but the best part? Went to see Midsummer. Oof, that afternoon in theaters. Definitely the most intense horror movie experience I've ever had, LOL. But yeah, the sight of the dude's bone sticking out has never really left my mind. I worked at a hospital in the transport department. We moved patients to and from, imaging tests, respiratory therapy, discharges, etc. One of our duties was moving deceased patients from the room they passed into the morgue. We also released bodies from the morgue to funeral home transportation representatives. There was one woman I released from the morgue that I will never forget. She had been in her 40s and must have weighed at least 500 pounds. Her entire face was swollen and puffy. Her skin was varying dark shades of blue and purple. Her mouth was wide open. The worst part? Her eyes were open. And they looked scared, terrified. I still have dreams about this woman every now and then, and they remind me to take care of myself and my body. I do not want to end up like that.
All right, just a couple of shout outs today to Camo Welder. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. We enjoy making the videos too, obviously. 5+ years. I think you gotta love it by then. And to the Fluffy Wendigo, happy belated birthday. Sorry I missed that one. I had to look back a couple days. If you'd like to hear any special requests or shout outs, just let us know. Thanks again, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And good luck with this video.
My mom died of an aggressive cancer. In the end, she had a necrotic hole in her midsection, a hole of rotting flesh you could smell. She no longer had her faculties and would pick at it. It was like a zombie movie, really fucked up. She died a few days later. The doctors were just pumping her full of this automated release of all the best drugs until she died, and there's nothing they could do at that point. Because my sister is a shit stain who kept trying to threaten legal action over her equal share of Mum's estate, not being enough for her, even though she stole a ton of money from Mum too, I had to maintain evidence of my visit, so I had horrific photos of Mum dissolving into a bed. It makes me emotional just seeing a thumbnail, yet I can't delete it. It's like someone from a concentration camp, but it's the only photos I have from the last decade as we were estranged. Alternative is when workers on a site I was working at dug into the river of human rot in a cemetery, and I smelt a lake of rotting human slime. Funnily enough, I knew instantly what it was. It's weird I recognized that smell before the rotting Mum thing. I didn't see it though, I guess, as it was just a slimy liquid. Everyone stopped work except for me and a coworker who can't stop once we start, as it was critical infrastructure, and it needed to be finished. So we kept working away, smelling rotting, gross shit. Posted this story before, but we'll share again. Years ago, I was at my friend's, and we were chilling and chatting in the backyard. Behind his back, I could see a family party going on. There were kids running around, and everyone was having a good time. One guy decided he was headed out and hopped in his truck. He started backing up, and there was a little girl right behind it. The thing happened in slow motion. The girl was 4 or 5 years old. The mother's screams were way worse. I can't watch Hereditary ever again. Toni Collette's scream in that movie sounds exactly like the mom's scream. It shoots me right back to watching it happen and not being able to stop it. I worked for the coroner's office for 2 years and seen about 5,000 bodies through them all. I'm also a firefighter, but nothing compares to the coroner's office. The worst of it, a dog had eaten a cat alive when it was left into a shithole apartment after its owner killed herself by hanging with an extension cord. After the cat was all done, it went to its owner and started eating her dangling feet. After being in the summer heat for about God knows how long and pulling at the body, the neck gave and the body spilled all over the floor. The dog ate the hands, the feet, and the eyes of the decapitated head. We picked the body up 3 months after her death, according to the coroner. Eventually, the dog died too. In a house with roommates in college, me and a friend dealer were smoking some pot in my room, watching some shit and talking. I got up to grab a beer from the fridge I kept in the garage, opened the door, and there in the dark is my roommate, sitting on the cold cement floor. Only light is from his laptop open on the ground in front of him. He's very obese, and I can't tell if he's wearing underwear on, but if he does, it's all he's wearing. I got my beer and left. I told my friend about what lurked in the garage, and he did not believe me. Went to check himself. I ran into him 5 years later, and he informed me that the site still haunts him. I also used the same experience to win a creepy roommate competition with my cousins. An inmate at the facility I worked at committed suicide by hanging. I was working day shift. I had stayed over to talk to my buddy, the night shift sergeant. I was on the way to my car when I heard the panicked call go out over the radio from the night shift officer, a rookie who found the inmate. I didn't know what was going on from the radio call, but I could tell by his voice that something was wrong. I ran back inside with Sarge, sprinted down the block, and found several night shift officers, along with another inmate, trying to support the guy's legs and lift him up as Sarge desperately attempted to untie the noose. I passed my rescue cutter to Sarge so he could cut the noose. We carried him to medical, and I took turns with the nurse and Sarge doing CPR for about 20 minutes straight. We tried to defib multiple times, but it just kept saying no shock advised. I still vividly remember applying a bag valve mask to the guy's mouth and nose to try and administer rescue breaths, only for all of the air to hiss and bubble back out of his cheeks. It was the worst noise, the worst visual. His trachea was crushed. We had to put a cervical collar on him just to try and stabilize his neck enough to get air to his lungs, but he was long gone. I don't know that I ever got over it. It's relatively tame in comparison to some of the stories here, but I'll never forget the time I almost watched a little girl get hit by a car. The little girl and her mom were crossing the street in a crosswalk, and the little girl's headband fell off. She ran back to grab it just as a car from the main road was taking a hurried left across traffic. The car stopped in time. Little girl was okay, but time slowed down for me as I prepared to watch bad shit happen. I don't know if I'll ever forget it. 1975, dark, rainy night, driving home with 3 buds from a night of board games. A block from home, a kid ran full stride from my left. He was less than 10 feet from my car when my headlights lit him up, bang, as he disappeared. I stopped and we jumped out. There under the car was a kid with blood coming from his ears, nose, and eyes. All I heard was, "Mommy, Mommy." That was from his tag buddy, but at the time it freaked me out as it seemed to me from the dead kid. I was in no way held responsible, but to this day I still see the instant that kid died. He simply will never unsee that. My friend sent in a group chat a random video into our group WhatsApp. I pressed play at work. It was a young woman being murdered by some African men. She was stabbed in her thighs and about to be beheaded when I noped off that shit. I called him out for it. His reaction was to post another video of someone with severed arms and legs, seemingly in the Middle East, bleeding out. I left the group. The best of it was he ghosted me for my reaction and calling him out. I tried to reach out to him about 6 months later, and it took like 2 years to even get a reply. Prior to this, he was my best friend. Pretty bizarre and still bothers me to this day. Horrible image in my head and lost a best friend. I saw a father and son who were victims of an IED in Baghdad, Iraq. The father was obviously driving and the blast came from his left. It continued through him to his 10-year-old son in the passenger seat. It hit him and blew through most of his face from the car down to the jawbone. That left most of the rest of his scalp intact. However, with no facial structure, his mostly intact brain was just sitting on his lap. We think he was eating chocolate bar at the time because there was chocolate in the back seat with tissue around it. That we assumed were his lips. Poor kid. When I was 12 or 13, I was walking home from school in the middle of July and I noticed a cat was laying on the side of the sidewalk in the grass. At the time I thought it was sleeping. But the cat was there every day for 2 weeks until the smell was bad enough that somebody else noticed it, got it, and taken away. I walked by that decomposing cat body every day for 2 weeks. By the 3rd or 4th day, I figured out it was 100% dead, and not just a consistently sleepy cat. And every day I got very upset walking by it, but for some reason I just kept walking past it. Even though there were lots of other ways home. I can still vividly remember that cat's corpse, the way its fur turned from white to brown and the smell, probably an ingrained trauma at this point. Very recently I saw what it looks like to see an 11-year-old's chest cracked open during a thoracotomy after he went into traumatic cardiac arrest due to a semi-truck crashing into the back of his family's vehicle at highway speeds while they were stopped in traffic. The responding firefighter said that the back seat of the car was shoved up against the firewall of the vehicle. That little boy died in one room. His best friend died in the next room over. They were coming home from soccer practice that day. The wail that father let out when he was told through an interpreter that his son had died haunts my dreams and brings me to tears just typing this out. I'm leaving emergency medicine in the next 16 months after almost 2 decades doing it. I'm finishing nurse practitioner school and going to be a primary care provider in an office. When I clock out for the last time, I'll do so with my head held high and I'll never look back, and it's because of shit like that. My father was a crash scene investigator back in the 90s when I was a kid. Always had a big folder of work stuff he bought home and told me never to open. Of course, saying that to a 10-year-old just meant I wanted to see more. Was pictures of what was left of an accident between a semi-trailer and a motorcycle. Semi just didn't see the bike according to what I read. Wasn't much left of them, just a crumbled mess of blood, an arm, and some bits of metal. 41 now and can't unsee those photos. Weirdly, I went on to ride myself, but I was taught everyone's out to kill you when riding. And I'd seen why I was taught that. Junior year of high school, I was longboarding with friends, made it down a hill ending at a 3-way stop first, then hopped off at the turn. Second friend made it down and hopped off too. Last friend tried to make the turn instead, came off the board the moment his front wheels hit pavement seam with a 0.5-inch upset. I watched from 10 feet away as he landed on the back of his head at 30 miles an hour. Instant seizure, blood coming out of every orifice. What sticks with me to this day isn't just the sight of my best friend's blood and brain on the pavement, it's the immediate, total look of vacant, frozen shock on my other friend's face. He was just stuck like a scarecrow. Couldn't even get his phone to call 911 as I tried to delegate that to him. Thanks to Boy Scouts, I knew what to do and kept him in recovery position so he wouldn't choke on his own blood while I got on the phone with 911, and they had him in an ambulance within 2 minutes to a world-class trauma center. He ended up recovering 100% physically after a 6-week induced coma. Truly a miracle. Sadly, he died of suicide a couple of years later because the benzos psych put him on in recovery sent him into a hole he couldn't climb out of. The saddest part is he had a full face helmet in the mail. It arrived 2 days later. Wear your helmets, kids, and go out of your way to learn and practice first aid skills.